Upon further inspection, Beau Pribula was alarmingly bad on Saturday for Missouri, but there's also some reasons for optimism too. So let's talk the good, the bad, and the ugly. Right now, I'm Locked On Mizzou.
You are Locked On Mizzou, your daily podcast on the Missouri Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, all you true sons and daughters, I'm John Miller, your Mizzou mafioso and the central scrutinizer of Missouri Tigers football and basketball. And on today's program, got a lot to get into on the Alabama game and going to quickly look ahead to the Auburn game as well, where the Tigers are surprisingly a slight underdog, at least according to FanDuel, heading into the ball game. Got some all-22 video to break down for you as well. And quickly, I do want to remind you today's episode is brought to you by Mazda. Like our players, we sweat every detail because when you make every move count, pulling off the unexpected is only the beginning. Stay tuned later for highlights. In this week's Moving the Game Forward, Mazda, move and be moved. And, well, I did some extra deep dives. As I said, I've got my all-22 video I'll be sharing with you here shortly throughout the program. But after taking a deeper dive into Beau Pribula's Saturday, I got to say I was legitimately alarmed by what I saw, and I was surprised by what I saw. And here's the deal. Even though Beau Pribula was quite simply just bad on Saturday afternoon, the good news is, I'll just get this out of the way, we have seen Beau Pribula play very, very well in a Missouri uniform before. In fact, the last time I did a deep breakdown like this, well, that was against Kansas, and in that game, well, Beau Pribula, I thought, threw the football with great accuracy, great confidence, and great anticipation, but unfortunately, I saw none of those three elements against the Crimson Tide. And really, again, if you want to be an optimist here, considering how large the gap in the quarterback play was in that game, and Ty Simpson was every bit as good, if not better, than I thought he looked live going back and breaking down the other side of the football as well. So considering Simpson was great and Beau Pribula very much was not, considering that, well, Missouri hung in there. It's actually quite impressive that Missouri hung in that ball game. And going back and looking at everything, just in the trenches, everything else, I thought Missouri mostly had that game at a stalemate. And that's taking nothing away from Alabama. That's giving Missouri credit as much as I possibly can here. And really, there was at least 4, by my counts, just disastrous plays that Pribula made. And let's just rip the Band-Aid off and get the last one out of the way, the final interception that basically ended the game. Well, it did end the game for Missouri. So Missouri has the ball here, 3rd and 10, 43 seconds left, no timeouts, just shy of midfield. So definitely Missouri's behind the 8 ball here, but not desperation or dire straits whatsoever. So this forced pass by Pribula simply doesn't need to happen. And hey, Donovan Olugbode has made some great contested catches in this ball game in particular, but this is a play that shouldn't happen. And you look, who I really want you to focus on is not Pribula or anybody on Missouri right at the moment here. Focus on the Alabama player on the far left who's in front of number 2, Marquise Johnson. Look at number 5 for Alabama here, the boundary corner here on the left side of your screen. As I roll this play forward here, what happens is if you'll notice his face, he's looking at Pribula the entire time. And he doesn't even look at Marquise Johnson at all. And in fact, goes right to the middle of the field, right where Donovan Olugbode is. It's as if he knows that this play is going to happen. It's actually unbelievable. And you see Johnson on the left side jumping up and down and gesticulating, throwing his arms up in the air because he can't believe, frankly, what he just saw. He's going, throw me the ball and it might be a touchdown here, Beau. That's a pretty easy pass, too. And, Pribula's looking to the left side this entire time here. That ball just simply cannot be thrown. It's just the timing is off there. Everything is off. But how is this corner for Alabama? How does he know practically that this is happening? Is this a total blown coverage here by Alabama? Either way, if you're Pribula, this is just something you have to see, quite simply. It's a ball that shouldn't be thrown, and to not see Johnson over here on the left side, I have to say there was multiple times where Johnson was kind of throwing up his arms in the air and gesticulating in Pribula. And I just say, generally speaking, I really don't like that kind of stuff. But on that particular play, it was tough to blame Johnson for being frustrated. That was not the first time that Pribula missed Marquise on what was a huge play. Of course, earlier in the ball game in the first quarter, well, Pribula, I don't need to bring up this snap. Everybody remembers it. Everybody saw it. Johnson was wide open down the right side of the field. That ball just simply has to be thrown in bounds. If that's thrown in bounds, could have very much been a wide open touchdown. Again, Johnson missed here on a crucial play where it looked like Pribula just forced the ball into Olugbode. It looked like he decided he was going to throw the ball to Olugbode pre-snap, had just made that determination. And I just have to say, pre-snap, I didn't even love the look either. So there was nothing about that decision that was good. And there were a few decisions like this, unfortunately, for Pribula in the game. Once again, though, the good news is I've seen it with my own eyes. Just like the film doesn't lie here. If you think I'm being overly harsh, I think I'm just being truthful, is what I think I'm being here. And just like the film doesn't lie on the negative side, again, on the positive side, we've seen really, really good moments from Pribula as well. Frankly, it was a little inexplicable, other than obviously Alabama deserves a bunch of credit. I think there were some moments in the game, certainly where their blitzes surprised and confused Missouri and Pribula. They're just such sound tackling from Alabama in the game. Anytime there was a dump off to a running back like Jamal Roberts, for example, and you thought, oh, just break one tackle and he could get 15, 20 yards here, Alabama time and time again was making those open field tackles. So the Tide definitely deserve tremendous credit, along with Ty Simpson, their excellent quarterback. But again, it's got to be a tough film session for Beau Pribula here on Monday. I wasn't exactly enjoying it that much myself. And coming up, I do want to talk just a little bit about the Auburn game. Going to get deeper into it as the week goes along. Of course, I've got a crossover scheduled with my buddy Zach Blackerby of Locked On Auburn as well. So I got some info on that and some early takes on Missouri-Auburn coming up in a little bit. But you know what? It wasn't all bad for Missouri. Of course, there were some positives to take away as well. I'll tell you, Damon Wilson was definitely one of them. And by the way, this episode is brought to you by Mazda's Moving the Game Forward. For those who believe it's not just about playing the game, it's about redefining it. And there are moments that do more than put points on the board. They move crowds, they move culture, and they keep moving the game forward. And this week's moment that moved the game forward is, well, to me, by Damon Wilson. Had just two really impressive sacks in the game. One in particular where Alabama showed him total respect, chipped him with a tight end before he got to the right tackle for the Tide, but it was not enough. He ends up beating both guys for an impressive sack and an important one against Ty Simpson. Really, if Wilson and Zion Young and that Missouri pass rush hadn't done a pretty good job of harassing Simpson at times, he would have had an even bigger game. So, by the way, when you follow what moves you, the unexpected is only the beginning. And just like there's more to every highlight, there's more to a Mazda vehicle. It is Mazda. Move and be moved. So we know when Missouri is going to take on Auburn, 6:45 this coming Saturday on the SEC Network. Surprisingly, Missouri getting a 1.5 over at FanDuel, by the way. Tigers minus 104 on the money line. So if you're not hip to that type of gambling speak, well, FanDuel's basically saying this game is a toss-up, which To me, I got to say, I feel pretty good about this game for Missouri. I don't think this team is just going to lay down after suffering a disappointing loss to Alabama. Quite simply, everything is still in front of this team, unlike an Auburn team, which at this point doesn't really have a ton to play for and looks very much vulnerable to a lay down type of situation, in my opinion. People are already talking, well, heck, if you caught me on the overreaction show on the SEC network feed and my feed, the Locked On SEC feed, I should say, and my feed as well yesterday. Well, you heard us talk a lot about Auburn and how, well, it isn't going very well for the supposed offensive expert and guru that is Hugh Freeze. So I got to say, I feel pretty good about this one. I'm not guaranteeing a victory by any means. Any road game in the SEC is going to be tough, that's for sure. But I will say this. My first thought is not only has Jackson Arnold, the former Oklahoma quarterback, by the way, famously got strip sacked at the end of that ball game last year for the Sooners against Missouri. Zion Young picks it up, runs it into the end zone for complete pandemonium at Faurot Field. But to me, I think the Tigers probably have the book on Jackson Arnold. We still have the same defensive coordinator, mostly the same defensive staff from last season. Tigers had a good game plan last year against Arnold. I think Missouri will probably have a pretty good one against him again. That's just my assumption. I will say if Missouri loses this game, I'm going to be a lot more bummed out and devastated than I was after the Alabama game. Excuse me. Certainly I was disappointed after the Tigers lost a couple days ago. But again, if you saw me yesterday on the SEC Overreaction show, I was in a pretty chipper mood, all things considered. So if we lose this one next week, though, 2 in a row, that's really going to feel bad. That's going to feel rough. That's going to feel like a massive missed opportunity there. And quite honestly, speaking of road games on the SEC, in the SEC, well, this is obviously going to be Missouri's first experience with it, and the Tigers going to play Vanderbilt the following week in Nashville before hitting another bye week. I think you probably got to win these next 2 games if you're Missouri, if you're still going to make the college football playoff, because we'll see what happens with John Mateer, that Oklahoma offense moving forward here. But in Norman, I think it's fair to say Missouri going to be an underdog in that game, at least as we speak here today. And Texas A&M's been playing great football too. They're undefeated coming to Columbia. I think you got to at least give yourself a little bit of a margin for error there. And obviously, I don't think Missouri can afford a loss to Auburn. Certainly winning these next 2 against Auburn and Vanderbilt would go a long, long way to increasing Missouri's odds of getting into the 12-team college football playoff. I will say this, though. I'm certainly not looking past Vanderbilt whatsoever, or Auburn for that matter, as I pointed out. I just feel a lot more confident about Auburn than I do Vanderbilt. And, well, again, speaking of my friends over at FanDuel Sportsbook, well, believe it or not, Vanderbilt at home this week, a 1.5-point favorite over LSU. I don't know how many of us, including myself, would have predicted that at the beginning of the season, even as much of a Diego Pavia believer as I am, at least in college football. I don't know that Diego is an NFL guy necessarily, but in college, you got to love him. Now, coming into the Alabama game, Missouri had the best third down conversion percentage in the country, just over 61%. Unfortunately, on Saturday, they went 1 out of 10. That included Pribula on those third downs going 1 for 5 passing for 7 yards and 2 interceptions. And since I brought up that 1 interception already, by the way, that included Bama was 3 for 3 on 4th down. So not only just the quarterback specifically, but, well, those particular moments in the game, those were obviously a huge, huge difference to the point where, and Alabama executed so well on those 4th downs. I was frankly a little surprised that the Tide didn't go for it when it had a 4th and 5 on the Missouri 36. I thought Mizzou that was after the Mizzou onside kick, that whole thing. I just thought, man, I thought Alabama would try to put the Tigers away there, but that was just me. But regardless, you know what? Let's look at the other, well, the dropped interception, one that really should have probably been intercepted by Alabama but wasn't, and then the other interception that I just spoke of on a 3rd and 4 situation here. So really this ball, which should have been intercepted by Alabama but was not, doesn't really require all that much knowledge of coverage or anything else. This is just basic common sense here. Beau Pribula rolling out to his right side here. He could easily, well, just hit Brett Norfleet in the flat, maybe hit Marquise Johnson out here as well on just a little comeback route. He's pretty open here too, though I understand why he may have passed this up. Pribula could easily just tuck the ball and run it himself here. There's some really simple options here that he could take. But unfortunately, he takes the toughest option of all, which is on the right here. Kevin Coleman, who has 2 defenders around him. Again, who cares what the coverage is? You've got 1 defender underneath you and 1 over the top. This is just simply a ball that should have never been thrown. Goes right into number 5's hands, but he drops it, unfortunately, for the Tide and fortunately for Missouri. Again, let's once again, Speedy Johnson with his hands in the air going, what the hell? I'm open, dude. What, do you hate me now? What is going on? Again, a lot of hands pointing up to the heavens in this ball game for Marquise Speedy Johnson for sure. Once again, I made that particular mistake. Again, it is Marquise Johnson. But the point here is that this ball is just simply a pass that should have never been thrown. And it was just, even though Missouri got away with it, this was just another good example of, well, Pribula just not seeing the ball in the game, just seeing the coverage in the game very well. Just the anticipation not there. And frankly, the footwork and the mechanics were off all game too. He just doesn't want to plant and actually, why is he throwing that off 1 foot either? Why not just plant and make a throw instead of, trying the Patrick Mahomes, let's try to show off my arm strength thing every time. I think the footwork and the mechanics were a little bit off in this one for me too. And now this is the other interception by Beau that did count. Missouri trailing by 3 here with 13 minutes left in the ball game. It's 3rd down and 4. And for those of you who thought Missouri should have run the ball more with the running backs, especially Ahmad Hardy, hey, I'm right there with you. I think this is a spot in particular where you could have argued Missouri absolutely should have run the football. It's 3rd down and 4. You're almost at midfield here. Not only do I think with a struggling quarterback who clearly is not seeing the field well, who's clearly struggling with his confidence in this game a little bit, I think you help him out. I think not only do you have a better chance of getting it, running it, well, if you run it and you get 2 or 3 yards, again, you're trailing in the game, you're almost at midfield, I think you consider going for it anyway. But regardless, Missouri decides to throw the football here, and what happens is just, frankly, another misread and just a force by Pribula. This is one of those balls where he tries to anticipate a seam ball coming open here on the left side, but there's just not much of a window there. And to the point where Kevin Coleman is not expecting the football, by the way. And that's something we saw repeatedly, which is for whoever's fault it is, and I can't say who to blame, that's for sure. I just know that that's obviously a function of a quarterback and a receiver not being on the same page. I'll also point out, too, that over here on the right side, Donovan Olugbode, he does come open on this. So to Kirby Moore, to his credit, maybe, if I'm gonna put blame on the play call, well, let's roll it forward here. Olugbode right there is pretty freaking wide open, isn't he? If he just hits him on a crosser there, that's an easy 1st down for Missouri, more than likely. He probably there's good timing there. He's probably just able to catch it and put his head forward and dive forward for maybe a 5-6 yard gain and a 1st down. But unfortunately, once again, Pribula just not taking the easier of the options and really the more sensible option here. Just simply the decision-making was not there in this football game. And speaking of that Missouri running game, I definitely wanted Hardy to get more touches. But to be fair, there were some real game script reasons that the Tigers weren't able to run the ball enough. And by the way, speaking of that running game, if it felt like Missouri was running right every single time to you on Saturday, where you weren't that crazy, especially in the first part of that football game. So let's talk more about this football game. And by the way, KenPom ratings are out for the Tigers. I'll reveal where good old KenPom is projecting our Missouri basketball team to finish this season. So all of that in a little bit. But first, yes, the NFL is back. College football is back. And it's been back for a while, of course. This isn't exactly breaking news, but here's what is breaking news. New customers over at FanDuel Sportsbook can bet just $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win. That's right. Pick a bet, put down $5, and if it hits, you'll unlock $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. And yes, it's time for my weekly Chiefs division winning bet update. Feeling better about it all of a sudden. Back to 500. Of course, the rest of the AFC looking shaky, but really it's more about the rest of the division in this case, right? The Chargers, really, I think it's more Denver and Bo Nix. Has he turned into a pumpkin here in October? I think he might have. But regardless, what are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com to download the FanDuel app today and get started. And I love talking about money. And because of that, well, I realize that most people don't know that much about it. And I'm not just talking Econ 101 here. I'm talking about their own properties, their own investments, their own bank accounts. And when you don't have that full picture, you can end up leaving a lot of money on the table. Well, that's where Monarch Money comes in, because Monarch is built for people with busy lives, people who aren't handy with a spreadsheet, for example, but you can finally feel in control of your money without even touching a spreadsheet. By the way, you can use Monarch Money to maximize your investments, increase your savings rate, and easily review finances with a partner, by the way, of your choosing, or a financial advisor, keeping a clear view of your financial health. So don't let a financial opportunity slip through the cracks. Use code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE at monarchmoney.com in your browser for half off your first year. That's 50% off your first year at monarchmoney.com with code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE. Now, all Missouri fans wanted more Ahmad Hardy, I think, after the game. But there is some explanation for the lack of Hardy touches. Just 21 minutes and 27 seconds of time of possession for Missouri. Alabama completely dominated that aspect of the game. That led to just 56 offensive snaps total for the Tigers. But I'll just say 12 out of 56 in terms of carries for Hardy. That still isn't a high enough ratio for me. That's not even 1 out of 4. Let's put it that way. So to me, you could have easily given Hardy still 20 carries in that game. Or how about 20 touches for that matter? Where were the screen passes, by the way? That's something that Kirby Moore and Missouri have hit pretty heavily in the past. It was kind of surprising how many times that in a game where Pribula could have used a little bit of help, how many times, to use my favorite phrase, how many times we made Pribula drop back and actually play quarterback versus playing point guard and just distributing the ball where it needed to go quickly before the snap. Stuff like screen passes, that type of deal, maybe a few more RPOs. But that was just my overall thought there. And by the way, it did really seem like Missouri was running every single time to the right at the first of the game, and I went back and watched it, and that absolutely was true, by the way, until actually 2 minutes and 53 seconds left in the first half. We ran outside zone to the right, or some version of a run play to the right side of the center every single time. Well, finally, here was the ironic part of that. When Missouri finally does run a play to the left, it was Jamal Roberts running an outside zone to the left. And what happened? Well, he gained 39 yards. Missouri ends up getting a field goal out of it. So I do think that's something kind of interesting to watch going forward. Is it more Hardy going to the right and Roberts going to the left, for example. It does seem like maybe Hardy has a preference running to the right, at least based on that one game. Anyway, that's just something I'm going to check out, at least take an eye at the rest of the season. By the way, Missouri did move down in the polls. Not too far, though, just a couple spots down to 16th in both the AP and the coaches polls. And this isn't a poll, but how about some ratings? Yeah, the KenPom ratings for our Missouri basketball team and the rest of the country are out. 28th is Missouri right now in the projections. Doesn't seem all that far off from where Missouri was, well, really the last couple seasons, where Missouri had a really good season last year and a not-so-good season the year before that. So hopefully this is not an every other year type of thing with Dennis Gates at Missouri. Quite honestly, it seems to me, especially include the Cleveland State run, that 0-19 campaign really just, I think it's just going to be the outlier of Dennis Gates' career. I don't think this is going to be that bipolar of a career. I just don't see any scenario where that could be possible. But if it is, he's not going to last very long. And I just hope that doesn't happen. I'm a Dennis Gates fan and looking forward to more good basketball this season. And, well, hopefully some more good podcasts to come for you the rest of the week as well. As I said, I got Zach Blackerby and Auburn crossover coming up for you. And, by the way, I didn't even get to even half of the plays I could potentially break down for you on the All-22. So we may have some more of that coming for you this week, too, including, hey, there's some positive stuff to get to. Hey, Damon Wilson, my God, he had some really impressive moments in that game. Donovan Olugbode as well. So the future and the present still bright for Mizzou football, just the Tigers took a real disappointing loss, to be certain. Not a humiliating loss by any stretch of the imagination, or even it definitely shouldn't be a dispiriting loss. Disappointing? Absolutely. No moral victories out of that one. I'm not saying that, but God, by golly, to take a page out of Bill Belichick's playbook, which is not really advisable these days, but I'm going to do it anyway. We're on to Auburn. And hey, like I said, hopefully you'll be on to Auburn with me all week. Until next time, I'm John Miller, and this has been Locked On Mizzou.